One of the most subtle yet devastating habits we fall into is comparison. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't scream destruction. It whispers quietly through a scroll on social media, through a glance at someone else's success, through the constant awareness of what we lack instead of what we have. Comparison is seductive because it disguises itself as ambition. We look at others and say, "That's where I want to be." But over time, that healthy admiration turns toxic. We stop being inspired by people and start being diminished by them. The danger of comparison isn't just that it makes us feel inadequate, it disconnects us from our own sense of progress. We forget that everyone's path has a different starting line, a different terrain, a different timing. But we judge ourselves as if life were a single race, with one finish line and one definition of success. That's not ambition, that's insecurity wearing ambition's clothing. What makes comparison so dangerous is how quiet it is. It operates beneath awareness. It convinces us that we're behind, that we should be further along, that our story is less significant because someone else's seems more polished. But we're comparing our behind, the scenes, to someone else's highlight reel. We see their outcomes but never their sacrifices. We envy their confidence without realizing how long they've battled their own doubt. There's also a psychological layer to this. Comparison triggers a deep biological response, the need for belonging, the fear of exclusion. It's wired into us to measure our place within the tribe. But in the modern world, that instinct is amplified beyond reason. We are constantly exposed to thousands of lives we cannot possibly emulate. Our nervous system was never designed for that level of exposure, so our sense of worth becomes fragmented. We lose track of our own values and begin chasing symbols of success that aren't even ours to chase. The truth is, comparison doesn't drive excellence, it drives exhaustion. It turns growth into a competition and learning into a performance. And the irony is, when we stop competing and start contributing, that's when we actually begin to thrive. If there's one thing worth remembering, it's this: your timeline is not broken, your pace is not wrong. You're not behind, you're simply becoming. The only person you ever need to compare yourself to is who you were yesterday, and that version of you deserves your focus far more than anyone else ever could. We all have that voice in our head that says, "Not yet. Not yet, because I'm not ready. Not yet, because I need more experience. Not yet, because the timing isn't right." It sounds reasonable, even responsible. But underneath that logic hides one of the most self-destructive habits we carry, the illusion of not yet. It's the quiet belief that the perfect moment will eventually arrive, that there will be a day when we feel fully confident, fully prepared, and absolutely certain that it's time to begin. But that day never comes. The truth is, readiness is a myth. No one ever feels ready to take a leap that truly matters. Every meaningful beginning is accompanied by uncertainty, the trembling voice, the shaking hands, the fear of not being enough. And that's precisely what makes it meaningful. Growth isn't born out of certainty, it's born out of movement. It's the act of stepping into the unknown that shapes us into the kind of person who can handle what's coming next. We often wait for the fear to disappear before we take the first step, but fear isn't a stop sign, it's a signal that something important is at stake, that what we're about to do actually matters. Waiting to be fearless is like waiting to learn how to swim without ever getting into the water. Courage doesn't precede action, it follows it. You don't find your voice before you speak, you find it because you speak. Think about the people we admire, the innovators, the artists, the leaders who changed the world. None of them began because they were certain of success. They began because they refused to wait. They acted, they failed, they learned, they adjusted. The difference between those who build something meaningful and those who don't isn't talent or luck, it's timing. And that timing is always now. What we call waiting for the right time is often fear pretending to be patience. We disguise our hesitation as wisdom because it feels safer to plan than to leap. But in that safety, we slowly erode our potential. Every not yet adds another brick to the wall between who we are and who we're meant to become. There's no perfect moment, only the moment you decide to begin. Readiness is not a feeling, it's a choice. The clock is already ticking, and the world doesn't need a more perfect version of you, it needs a present one. One of the most common ways we quietly sabotage ourselves is by trying to please everyone. It sounds noble being agreeable, kind, accommodating. We tell ourselves we're being good people, good friends, good colleagues. But what we often call kindness is sometimes just fear dressed up as virtue. Fear of rejection, fear of disappointing others, fear of being misunderstood. We start saying yes when we mean no. We take on responsibilities that drain us, all in the hope that someone will see our effort and give us their approval. But here's the problem. The more we try to please everyone, the more invisible we become to ourselves. When we constantly adjust who we are to fit into other people's expectations, we lose touch with our own truth. We trade authenticity for acceptance, and ironically, the more we chase approval, the less respect we earn. People might like us, but they don't really know us, because we've built a version of ourselves based on what we think others want, not on who we truly are. That's not connection, that's performance. There's a psychological reason behind this. From an early age, we're conditioned to associate approval with safety. When we were praised, we felt loved. When we were criticized, we felt threatened. So as adults, we continue to seek validation even at the cost of our own boundaries. But approval is a moving target. No matter how hard you chase it, it keeps shifting. The moment you please one person, another is disappointed. You can't win a game where the rules keep changing. Authenticity requires courage, the courage to disappoint some people in order to remain true to yourself. Boundaries are not walls that push others away. They are lines that protect your integrity. Saying no doesn't make you unkind, it makes you honest. It means you've chosen truth over comfort, clarity over confusion. The people who truly value you won't love you less for having boundaries. They'll trust you more for being real. The paradox of life is that the more we try to be everything to everyone, the less we are to anyone at all. You don't need to be universally liked to live meaningfully. You need to be genuinely known by a few. So the next time you feel torn between pleasing others and honoring yourself, remember this. Respect built on honesty lasts longer than approval built on compromise. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It's the foundation for every authentic connection you'll ever have. It's interesting how most of us crave growth, yet we avoid the very environments that demand it. We say we want to learn, but secretly, we want to look competent while doing it. We want to expand, but not at the expense of our pride. And that's why so many people never reach their true potential, because they avoid being the stupidest person in the room. We've been conditioned to equate intelligence with status, to believe that being the most knowledgeable means being the most valuable. But the truth is, if you're always the smartest person in the room, you're probably in the wrong room. Growth doesn't happen in comfort, it happens in curiosity. The moment you stop feeling challenged, you stop evolving. And the people who truly excel in life aren't those who always have the answers. They're the ones who are humble enough to keep asking better questions. There's a deep psychological layer to this. Our egos are wired for protection. We fear looking foolish because we associate it with inadequacy, with losing respect. But that fear keeps us small. It stops us from seeking mentors, from trying new things, from admitting what we don't know. Yet the irony is that pretending to know everything makes us less credible, not more. People respect humility far more than they respect arrogance. The willingness to say, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn, is not weakness, it's leadership. Think about every great innovator, every visionary thinker. They all started from a place of not knowing. They asked questions no one else was willing to ask. They entered rooms where they didn't belong yet, and because of that discomfort, they grew into the kind of people who did. When you surround yourself with people who are smarter, wiser, or more experienced. You're not diminishing your value, you're multiplying your possibilities. The ego will always try to protect you from looking small, but growth requires shrinking for a moment so you can expand later. You can't fill a cup that's already full, and you can't learn if you're constantly performing competence. So, choose the rooms that intimidate you. Walk into the spaces where you feel out of your depth. Because that discomfort is not a sign that you don't belong. It's proof that you're in the right place. Remember, the goal isn't to be the smartest person in the room. The goal is to keep finding rooms that make you smarter. We live in a culture that worships busyness. The first thing people tell you when you ask how they're doing is, "I've just been so busy." It's said with a strange sense of pride, as if exhaustion has become a badge of honor, proof that we're doing something worthwhile. But busyness isn't the same as productivity, and it's certainly not the same as purpose. The truth is, many of us are not busy because we're driven, we're busy because we're afraid. Afraid of being still, of being quiet, of having to face the questions that come up when the noise fades. We fill our calendars, stack our commitments, and say yes to everything because it makes us feel important. The more meetings, deadlines, and projects we have, the more valuable we believe we are. But deep down, busyness is often a form of avoidance, a distraction from reflection. It allows us to escape the discomfort of asking, "Why am I really doing all of this? Or is this actually moving me closer to the life I want?" Psychologically, we confuse motion with meaning. We equate effort with impact, but there's a difference between doing a lot and doing what matters. Movement feels good because it gives us a sense of progress, even when we're going in circles. That's why some of the most exhausted people in the world are also the least fulfilled, because their energy is scattered, not directed. We've mistaken being busy for being useful, and it's costing us clarity, creativity, and connection. The greatest thinkers, artists, and leaders have always valued stillness, not as laziness, but as discipline. Stillness gives us the space to think deeply, to make choices with intention rather than reaction. It allows us to listen to what our lives are trying to tell us. But when we fill every silence with noise, we lose that wisdom. It takes courage to slow down in a world that rewards speed. To pause, not because you're done, but because you want to ensure your energy aligns with your purpose. That's not weakness, that's mastery. Anyone can be busy, very few can be focused. So maybe it's time we stop glorifying exhaustion and start honoring alignment. Because when your actions reflect your purpose, even doing less can accomplish more. The goal isn't to do everything, it's to do what actually matters deeply and well. One of the hardest battles we ever fight is the one that happens inside our own minds, the quiet war of self-doubt. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It tells us we're not talented enough, not ready enough, not worthy enough. And what makes self-doubt so destructive is that it often sounds rational. It convinces us that we're simply being realistic, cautious, grounded. But in truth, self-doubt isn't protecting us, it's limiting us. It's the invisible ceiling we place over our potential. We often think that confidence is something we must feel before we act, but that's not how it works. Confidence doesn't come before action, it's built through it. Every time you take a step forward, even a small one, you give yourself evidence that you're capable. The problem is, many of us wait for certainty before we begin, and so we never do. We underestimate how much clarity and courage are born after we start, not before. There's a psychological paradox at play here. The more potential we have, the more our doubt tends to grow. Because the greater the vision, the greater the fear of falling short. Self-doubt isn't always a sign that you're unqualified. Sometimes it's a sign that you care deeply, that you're stepping into something that matters. The key isn't to silence doubt, it's to stop letting it dictate your decisions. Every person you admire has wrestled with it. Every leader, every artist, every innovator, they've all had moments where they questioned whether they were enough. The difference is, they didn't wait for the fear to leave before they acted. They carried it with them. They understood that courage isn't the absence of doubt, it's the decision to move forward in spite of it. The most dangerous part of self-doubt is that it disguises itself as truth. It tells us that our dreams are unrealistic, that our voice doesn't matter, that someone else would do it better. But those are not facts, they're fears pretending to be wisdom. The only way to disprove them is through action. You don't overcome doubt by thinking your way out of it, you act your way out of it. So the next time that inner voice whispers, "Who are you to do this?" answer it with action. Because the real question isn't who are you to try. The real question is, who are you not to?